basics of C programming. Basically, basics of programming. C comes later. Let's first understand the very basics of this word programming. Okay, why do we need programming? There's a very famous quote by Steve Jobs. Okay, uh, he said it maybe somewhere in some convocation ceremony. I don't remember. It goes something like that, that everybody in this country should learn how to program a computer, say, because it teaches you how to think. Because when we program, we basically implement our own thinking into the computer. Computers are a passive device. Okay, if you ignore artificial intelligence, of course. So by passive device, I mean that you always need to tell them what to do. Now, it means you have to communicate them, you have to give them instructions. Okay. So programming is just an instruction to the computer about what to do and how to do it. Now, the problem is that instructions always need to be understood by the person who is receiving them. Now, for example, if you're giving an instruction to a Japanese person and he doesn't know any other language other than Japanese, then you have to speak in Japanese. Similarly, instructions, there are different languages which the computer understands. Actually, the computer understands only one language, which is the machine language. Come to that. But for now, just assume that there are different languages and for communicating with the computer. Okay, and they are called programming languages. They are called programming languages. What is this machine language? See, any computer, your PC, your laptop, your mobile, your washing machine also has a circuit board. So anything, they all understand on the very core, they understand just one language, which is binary. Okay, because they are, at the end of the day, they are electronic devices. So basically they only understand 0 and 1. They only understand off state and on state. So there are millions of transistors. I think we discussed this in a bit about this previously also, and they produce on and off states, which is understood by the computer. So everything they understand is in terms of binary. So you can say that the computer's native language is binary. Okay, just like we have native tongues. So similarly, it's the mother tongue of computers. But the problem with binary is that as humans, we really find it difficult to talk, imagine, and visualize in terms of binary, in terms of ones and zeros. Okay, even if you understand how to do that conversion, you don't feel very familiar with it. So a programming language basically allows us to translate these ones and zeros into something that humans can more easily understand, and also vice versa. I mean, when we say something, then the computer programming language translates it into ones and zeros, and when the computer says something in ones and zeros, the programming language helps us to translate it into something which is more understandable for us. And this ones and zeros वाला जो term है ना, means the way in which the computer understands. This is called machine language, the language which is actually understood by machines. Now, this concept of translation, this brings us to the first category and understanding of programming languages. Low level language and high level language. What is this low level language and high level language? Basically, it means nothing. The programming languages are divided broadly into two types. So low level languages are languages which are closer to the machine language. Okay, maybe very similar to ones and zeros of my binary language. Machine language, by machine I mean binary. So they are very close to that machine languages, while high level languages are closer to how humans communicate. Now, what do we mean by that? We mean that they will contain some words which are there in English. For example, if you use Python, so they will have words like else, if, okay, and while, for. We'll find them in C also. So they are something. There are many things which are very easily comprehensible by humans. For example, a very good example of low level language is assembly language. Okay, it is somewhere between machine code language and our source code. Now, the benefit of low level languages is, since they are very close to the machine language. Now, if you're writing a code in low level language, this means that, see, for example, here is the low level language and here is the machine language. So the distance between them is very less. So the communication or the transportation of messages, the decoding of messages is very fast. So low level languages are very fast. On the other hand, high level languages is here and machine language is here. So the distance between them is very good. This means that it takes more time to decode and translate, so slower in execution. But one benefit of low level languages is that they are difficult to program, of course, because again, They are not very something very easily understandable by humans, difficult to program. Now, programming is only the first step. Once you may write a program and you miss something, you make some syntax error, then the debugging is the main headache. So they are even more difficult to debug. While on the other hand, it is easier to program in a high level language and also it is easier to debug. So, for example, nowadays, the difference, so the processing powers of computers has increased so much that this point, slower in execution, it is, but in reality, the difference is very, very less nowadays because the processing power has increased so much nowadays that this difference, maybe it is, this difference will be in maybe milliseconds. So it hardly matters for normal humans like us, unless we are rocket scientists. So and all these others are merit. So that is why we mostly use HLL these days, high level languages. One thing that you should remember is this execution is also the time which is called the time compilation time or the time taken by the compiler. Now, what is this compiler? Programming language comes with a special program, your language into binary language or machine language. Compiler is the program that handles it. It's basically a special program which comes along with the programming language. It's a special program that comes with the programming language which takes care of translating what we write into the binary code. So whenever we write a code, we first compile it. So when we compile it, what it does is it converts our program into an executable file and saves it there. And then when we run the program, that executable file .exe extension that is executed also. And also the compiler knows the rules of that language, I mean that programming language. So if you don't obey some of the rules, for example, if you missed a semicolon somewhere, so the compiler will give an error that okay, this is something that is not according to the rules, so they will give you an error, but only syntax error. Why so many languages? But why so many languages? There's PHP, there's Python is there, there's Java is there, even C has many versions, Java can any versions are there. So why? The reason is very simple. The different languages have been designed for different purposes. For example, some language is good for web development. Some language can be good for app development. For app development, we use JavaScript. Some will develop apps. Some languages will be good for making games. Some will be good for solving numerical problems, like MATLAB. There's a software which you will use, most probably you'll use in college, MATLAB. So it's maths lab basically. So it's very good for solving numerical problems and applying mathematical high matrix calculations, large matrix calculations. So this is the reason why we have different programs which are suitable for different jobs. Now comes the question how to write a program. It looks a little question, but it's a very big question, which with open-ended question. But online there nowadays you have online compilers for different languages. Okay, maybe I'll show it one to you today. So you can just write, for example, online C compiler, and you can write the code there. You don't need to install anything. You just compile it there, you execute it there, you see if there's an output, or if you have written it wrong, then you'll get an error. You can test your codes on online compilers, or of course there are IDEs, integrated development environments, like code blocks, like VS Code. Also you can, but at the root you can even write your code in a notepad, you know because a notepad is just a text document. So maybe, for example, if you're writing, there are extensions for different, see, the compiler of a language identifies its code by some extensions. For example, for C language, the extension is .c. For Python, the extension is .py. So, for example, if you write your code in a notepad, txt, and you save it, with the extension .c or .py, depending on what language you are using, and then you can go to the command prompt and you can access that file from there if you have saved it in your directory, in the correct directory, and then you can try to execute it. So I mean, what I'm trying to tell you is that you can use any of these. So this doesn't matter that much, but we will try to show you all these ways in the future classes, so that you just get an idea. You don't get overwhelmed whenever you encounter any of these. But the easiest to use is online compilers. See, there are two ways to learn. For one is, what I planned is that we can understand the basics of some basics which are very fundamental, keeping in mind someone who has been introduced for the first time, and then we will go ahead with programs. Okay, but also we will encounter some bits and pieces of the programs in while I'm explaining, so that the concepts become clear. See, what happens when we have written the code, but what happens, does the compiler do in the background when we run it or basically execute it? Let's just understand it this way, that for example, you have written a code. So it is basically what you have written is source code. You will hear there's something like this, that you remember we discussed it in previous classes that some softwares are open source. Okay, this means what? Basically, there's source code, the code which designs that software or that website is available in the public domain. So if there's a website which is open source, you can actually see its code. So when you run it, the translator, the compiler converts it into, assembly code, and then it is converted into machine code, and then it is run. Basically it is, as I told you, it is saved as an .exe file, and then you can run it. This whole process is done when can be done easily when you use an online, if you are using an online compiler. So many a times, first you can compile and then you can run. If even if you directly run it, of course they cannot run it unless they have the .exe file. So therefore they will automatically first compile it, and then they will execute the .exe file to run it. Now one more term that you'll often face is algorithm. They will say that, okay, develop the algorithm of this problem. So it sounds really cool. Of course it is cool. Meaning is very simple. It algorithm of a problem or of a solution is basically the steps to solve the problem. For example, if you have a linear equation, right, or simultaneous linear equations. So what is the process? In the first equation, we isolate one variable x in terms of y, and then we substitute it in the second equation, and then in the second equation there is only one variable y with equated with something something. Then you find that y, then you put the y back in the first equation or the second equation to get the x. So this is the algorithm. You can write it in a systematic way, and that becomes the algorithm of solving a simultaneous linear equation in two variables. As simple as that. Compiler, I think I've already told you, it's the translated program that comes with every programming language. For example, so this picture can help you to get a clear concept. If you have the source code, the compiler basically converts it into the machine code and then executes it to give you the output. So this is a basic picture of how compiler works. Now, whenever you want to use a programming language, you need to install its compiler first. That is why we are stressing on the compiler, because compiler is you'll keep hearing this term if you are into programming. Now, compiler, there is one demerit. If you remember, we had also discussed a term called interpreter. So interpreter also converts from one language to another, right? But it works in a different way. So we need to understand that. Let's write it this way. Now what compiler does is it lists all the errors together, or it basically what it does, as you saw in the picture, it converts the entire code to machine code, and it save the file so that it can be executed again and again. So the benefit is that once it has converted to exe file, it saves it, so the next time when you execute it, the execution is faster. Okay, so it's not that every time it's gonna take the same amount of time. So the execution when you're using a compiler is faster, but the debugging is difficult because you get all the errors at the same time, so the debugging is difficult. Now what an interpreter does is, it for example, this is a 10-line code, so interpreter starts interpreting, and the second line it gets an error, so it will stop there itself and tell you that, okay, in the second line you have a problem. So it gives the errors line by line. I think it makes it very clear why debugging when you're using an interpreter is much easier. But every time you use an interpreter, every time you have to, when it is going to execute, so it will do the same job again and again. So every time it's gonna take the same amount of time. So execution is slower compared to a compiler. Now when we are saying slower and faster, you must remember that in reality, with so much processing power that we have at our disposal, this slower and faster is almost insignificant for us. But I just told you so that you have an idea that why it is slower, why interpreter is slower. These are some basic things some people can ask, and they'll feel cool about asking you this. Some old guy, 30-year-old, 35-year-old techie, they will love to ask you this, and so that you get stuck there, and they will feel that you don't know anything, and sometimes we also feel that. So yeah, we should know these things. That's why these are being discussed. Now, where to program? Okay, so where to program? One good viable option is IDE, integrated development environment. So what are there are some benefits which because of which we feel comfortable programming in IDEs. One is something you must have used when you must have seen in WhatsApp chatting, if you are using Gboard autocomplete auto typing. So it tries to auto complete your code. So for example, if you're writing half, so maybe you don't need to write the other half. This is also seen in Google search. Then syntax highlighting. This is one of the very good benefits. I'll explain what this means. And also debugging. Debugging is easier when you're using an ID. Let me just show you the syntax highlighting part, because this you will see, you'll find them in many editors when which you will use. See, if you just write it in a plain editor like Notepad, so this it looks like somewhat like this maybe. So you're not able to figure out which are the different terms and keywords, and that is why if you have a long code, maybe 200 lines or 500 lines or 1000 lines, so it becomes really difficult to find some part. But syntax highlighting means it divides this your code into the different parts according to the syntax. So therefore it doesn't only look nice, but also it's not just put color, colors have been not just put to look nice. It's put mainly so that it becomes really easy for you to type as well as to debug. Okay, autocomplete means, for example, if you're trying to write system dot java dot lang, it's a library, language library in Java. As soon as you write sy, so these are the options that come, so you can just select them, so you don't need to type it complete. Simply similarly debugging, of course, this is something that you get even in online compilers. So if you have missed, for example, a semicolon, so but what benefit is there, that sometimes even before you compile, at the same time they will debug and they will tell you that okay, some syntax errors you can remove then and there before even you compile. Now coming to a term that I just now used, syntax. See, every language has some rules. इसको grammar भी बोल सकते हैं. Any language that you use, it has some grammatical rules, right? In even if you're using Hindi or English, anything. So the grammar of a programming language is called syntax. That's as simple as it goes. So syntax changes from language to language, but the algorithm, it remains same. See, the algorithm to solve a simultaneous linear equation in two variables. If you speak it, if you explain the algorithm in Hindi, if you explain it in English, if you explain it in Kannada, if you explain it in Japanese, the algorithm will be the same. The grammar will be different, so the syntax will be different. It's just the syntax that changes. That too, not always it will change very greatly, or very, there's not a huge difference. But if you just learn one programming language, so just as soon as you understand the syntax of another language, you can code in that language as well. Let's use a very basic start with a, and now we are trying to understand the syntax of C language. So let's just start with a very basic program. You must have seen it. I'm sure you must have seen it a lot of times. Maybe somewhere it's called the Hello World program. And with this basic program, we'll try to understand what all things are there. Instead of hello world, let's write hello electrowords. Now see, C is a mid-level language. While now if you have to write, I'll explain every part of this program. Okay, let's just hold for a few minutes. So this is the where the program starts from, and this is where it ends. Now if we had to write the same program in Python, just assuming we would only write this much. See, because it is a high level language, so we need to write so less. Now you may ask, then why are we learning C if Python is so easier to code? See, it's not easier to code. It's looking at like you have to write so less. But the first point is there's actually three reasons. The first point is that it's more difficult to debug as well, because sometimes it's complicated to find the errors. Secondly, we have our main purpose is to understand Arduino and work with Arduino boards. So they work, the Arduino IDE uses C programming. And thirdly, we start learning from basics. So wherever you go, we first learn C. Now let's discuss different parts of this program, because looking at it for the first time, it feels, sometimes it can feel a little overwhelming. Don't worry. See, hash include, it is used to include a library. Okay, I'll tell you what a library, and this is that library which we are including here. Now, what is a library? It is just a box of tools. For example, what is the actual library? It contains all the books that you need for some job. Similarly, a library in programming contains all the functions that you need for that program. For example, you're going for a war. So depending on where you're fighting and who you're fighting, you will collect, you will take a box of weapons, which are the fit weapons that I might need for this war. Similarly, when you're writing a program, when you're going to write a program, what we do is we first try to collect different types of weapons or the functions. Weapons का मतलब यहाँ पे functions. I'll tell you what functions are that we might need in the program. Okay, so these functions are stored in different libraries. So we just import like this thing is called importing a library. So we have just brought a box which contains the weapons that we will need further down in the program. Okay, what are those weapons and functions? We'll see. So this is the box that we have brought, stdio, standard input output. This is the main function. Whenever we write a function, it has a bracket after this, and this is the name of the function, main function. Now, what is the job of that main function? What is the function basically? Yeah, this is the weapons that we are talking about. Function is a standard piece of code which is written to avoid writing it again and again. For example, you want to write, for example, at the earlier times, why was programming started in the basic things? In the earliest times, because as humans we don't want to repeatedly do something again and again. That was the most basic reason. For example, a calculator, we don't want to keep adding, therefore a shopkeeper keeps a calculator, right? So calculator has a function like addition, like square root, like subtraction, like multiplication. All these are what their functions. So instead of you writing that code for that job again and again, you have some functions. For example, if you're writing a code for square root, so you have a function sqrt. So you can directly implement it like the square sqrt 24, 25. So it will give you 5 as output. So instead of writing this, actually has in the background, it has a piece of code, standard piece of code which is written. Somebody has written and made it available to you in terms of by which you can call by this sqrt name. When you call that weapon comes to you, and it does the job. That's the basic meaning of it. And all these different functions are stored in sets of libraries. So now we have imported stdio, standard input output. So we must be using some function, we must be needing some function in this program, because of which we have imported the library. What is that function? Whenever you have to take input, or you have to put produce output in your program, you need this stdio.h library. Now here we are producing an output, hello electro world. So we are when you are producing this output, therefore for producing this output, you need to use this function printf. This is the function, just like sqrt function. Someone had written a code for printf, and they have stored it, and you once you access import the library stdio.h, then you can very easily just write that function's name and you can use it. That these libraries and functions are the thing that makes programming so much easier. Just imagine that there were no libraries and no functions. No one had made any libraries. So for everything you have to write the code. For printing also, you have to write a code. For a square root, something so simple that as finding a square root or cube root. For that also, for even taking an input, simple input of a single digit number, you have to write a long code. So then there's no point in it, because every time we are writing, so these are some common jobs which they know that you have to do, therefore they have put it in different libraries and they have made it available to you. Now there's one word here that we missed: void. See, whenever you're using a function, we specify to the compiler by a word, by a prefix, what that whether that function is returning something. Acha, we didn't discuss the main function. Sorry. See, the main function, now you know what is a function. Main function is the function with which the execution starts. Execution of the program starts from the main function. This is the function which is executed first. Now what do we mean by that? For example, you have a program which has a function called a1. Acha, these brackets are nothing but they are used to specify the blocks of code. So everything that you have put in these brackets, it is the compiler understands that okay, all these are one block of code lying in this function. So now, for example, if you have written a program like this, there's A4, then there's A2, then there is the main function maybe. So even if you have written the main function in the end, when the compiler starts executing, when the program starts executing, sorry, the main function is start executed first. It's not that they will go in order A1, then A4, then A2. No. And the main function's job is to call the other functions, and in the order in which the main function calls the functions, in that order only the functions will be called. Called means implemented. For example, in the main function, if I call A2 first, then I called A4, then I call A1. So A2 will be implemented first. Okay, the control after the compiler comes to this line, then the control will go to A2. This all will be executed, then it comes back here, then it goes to the next line, then it goes to A4, wherever it is in the sky, then it comes back to A4, then A1 is called and implemented. So this is the meaning of the main function. From there the execution starts. Okay, now I told you the main function is calling A1. When it main function is calling A1, that then the compiler should know what A1 is doing, whether it is returning any value, returning. For example, if we write z is equal to sqrt25, basically this is a function to find square root. So this function is finding the square root of this parameter 25, and then it is returning that square root into the variable where it is being called, like 5. So z will become 5. So this sqrt function is returning an integer. So the data type of the number or value which is being returned, that is specified by this term. Now since the main function is not returning anything to anyone, therefore the term here is void. Void means this function is not returning anything. For example, the main function is a good example. For example, the printf function. Printf function doesn't return anything. It just does its job. Whatever you write within it in double quotes, it just prints it. So it is also a void kind of function. If it was, but sqrt, is sqrt a void function? No. Sqrt's type would be maybe int, or if I'm not wrong, it's actually double. We'll discuss what are these data types, but it's not void because it is returning something. Now, what is this? This is a single line comment. Now, a comment is something just like in real life. In real life, a comment is a useless thing. Similarly, in programming, also, a comment is a useless thing for the compiler. As soon as the compiler finds symbol, it knows that okay, the everything else that is written in this line is a single line comment, and it doesn't execute it. So comments are not executed. You can write your name here. You can write any story. You can write abusive words depending upon your taste. Anything you write here, the compiler doesn't care. But then why are comments written? Comments are written for the programmer. Now, if you have written 1,000 line code and you have sent it to someone else, now if they want to understand, or if you only want to understand after 3 years, what was something that you were trying to do in this part of the code. So for your own reference and for the reference of others, we write comments so that they can understand, okay, this is something that I was doing here. Okay, it's like a reminder. Now this is a multi-line comment. Name only suggests when you have to write a comment which is more than one lines, you can start it and then you can end it with this symbol, so it becomes a multi-line comment. So these are not executed, of course. Now printf, of course, now you know that it is a function. It is a void function because it doesn't return anything, and anything that is written within it in double quotes, it is printed as it is. Coming to this semicolon, this is the line terminator. See, we might have, if you see this program, I have written it in different lines, right? Even I can write 3 4 more lines after this printf, and ending, but we write them in different lines like this. When we are writing a program, we write like this, we write like this, we write like this. So this is something what we have the habit, so it is convenient for us. But this new line doesn't mean anything for the compiler. Compiler only separates two lines by knowing this line separator or line terminator. You can write your entire 1000 line program in a single line, separating them by semicolons. For the compiler, it doesn't make any difference. It is only for our convenience, for aesthetic, value, that we write them in different lines for easy understanding. But if you avoid this semicolon, if you miss this semicolon, the compiler feels that okay, this is one line. In fact, a one line of code, you can break it into all the letters. You can change the lines V, R, I, N, T, F, and like this, and you can write it. The compiler will assume that okay, it is only one statement. As long as it doesn't encounter a semicolon, everything between two semicolons is one line for the compiler. That's the best way to describe it. Depend now functions. Who created the functions like sqrt? Yeah, there are some inbuilt functions which are provided with the programming language, and in reality you can also create your own function. What are these a1, a2, a4? These are functions that I made. You can make functions like these for your own sake. If you want a function where, for example, if you are a school teacher and your job is to find the average marks of, there are 10 subjects and there are 70 students, and your job is to find the average marks of every student, okay, and then you have to tabulate it. So you don't want to do it again and again, so you make a function average marks, and you write the program once, and then you use that function whenever you save that function, and then you can use it again and again whenever you want it. What other things are there? Okay, comments, we discussed single line, multi-line. Okay, there are white spaces as well. What are white spaces? Anything that is present in a program but you don't see it, they are called white spaces. For example, a space, a horizontal tab, a line change. This is a escape sequence. These are called escape sequences. I'll tell you what they do. This is also escape sequence. They represent a certain job in a print statement. This is an online compiler, online GDB. You can search. There are many various compilers. You can use them. Do you see here in this code which is already provided? This is int main. So when they have written int main, they have to return something. So therefore, this statement return 0 has been written. Now, if we want to remove this, we'll make it void. And okay, this is the program that's written. You all can use these online compilers maybe during the class or after the class. Let's try to run it. Hello afterwards. So this is the output. Now, what is the job of escape sequences? Escape sequences, they are parts which, even when you, for example, if I wrote printf hello electro or let us write hello world shorter, but I don't want the hello and world to be the same line. I want them to be in different lines. So before the printf statement prints them, I want it to do a line change in between. But the problem is that printf, whatever you write within the double quotes, it just prints it. So there has to be a symbol to let the printf function know that okay, this is something which is not to be printed, but a job which needs to be done. That is done by escape sequences. So if I put an escape sequence here, /n /, so as soon as the printf function encounters this slash, it knows that okay, the next letter is going to tell me a job to be done, and it's not that I have to print it won't print like this, it's not that it will print like this. No, it will actually print like this, hello and world in the next line. We can even see this if you want. Let us just put a / here and then execute it. So do you see this? There's a dent here. Okay, so this is because we have put a space before hello and after hello and / if we remove it, then it's gone. I want you to print. So if you want to print a / how will you print it? Of course, it doesn't require anything extra. You can just put it in the text and it will get printed. Now let me see if there's some picture that we need to see here. Yeah, I think we discussed this. You can see it again here. So what do you think the output of this program will be? There's no line change here. So even if you're writing separate statements, the actual output will be like this, somewhat like this. Hello world, and then exclamation mark, and again continue. It will be continued here. It will like hello world and something like that. There will be no line change. On the other hand, If you look at the second program, it has a skip sequence of line change. So as soon as this part is printed, after that the line changes and this second hello world is printed in the second line. So this is what we needed to discuss here, and that is also why semicolons are very important. Now we'll read about some errors. Okay, what are the different kinds of errors that we do in the programming? Because it takes generally it takes 1 hour for you to write the program, and sometimes if you've written a very long program, it can take you 5 hours to find a small error. We have not called a function properly. Not will that won't happen maybe now, but it can happen. Okay, so errors are basically of three types: syntax errors, logical errors, and runtime errors. See, syntax error is something very easy to understand. Grammatical errors. In any language, you can make grammatical errors. Similarly, in programming also, if you make a grammatical mistake, this is called a syntax error. Very common, very common example is that you might have missed a semicolons, or you might have missed forgot to close a bracket, curly bracket, or maybe you might have opened with a curly bracket and closed with a square bracket. Sometimes people do that. So all these are grammatical mistakes. Now, what happens when you okay, let us first understand the errors. Logical errors. Logical errors are the errors in your logic. You came to do addition and you did square root. That is your error, no? So you will get the output, but that output error is anything which hinders or makes your output wrong. So if you have done a logical error in your program itself, instead of addition you did multiplication, of course your output will be wrong. But that is not something that is the computer mistake. It's your mistake. Okay. So that is a logical error. And what is a runtime error? Anything when the run see the name only tells us anything. Runtime error, the error that happens during the running of the program, for any due to anything which was not caught during the compilation, but something that happened you know when the program was executing, maybe some unforeseen situation or some kind of unknown situation that happens that caused a runtime error. We'll see the examples. For example, yeah, logical error example I already gave you. Instead of plus you did multiplication. Runtime error is like, for example, anywhere there was a variable a by b, and in b, the value got updated to 0, and we know that division by 0 is out of the computer's OCAD, so therefore it will lead to a runtime error. Or for example, there's a matrix. The matrix is just like for example, 10 boxes are there. Matrix is like a 10 box of memory spaces, and there are only, for example, there are only 4 boxes, and you are trying to store something in the fifth box. So the fifth box doesn't exist. So this will lead to a runtime error. Now, what we need to understand, one more thing that we need to understand here is that syntax error. See, there is a syntax error, the program will not compile only, because during compilation only the compiler checks for syntax errors, and it will give that okay, there is a syntax error. In logical errors, the program compiles as well as executes, but gives the wrong output. In runtime error, what happens is, yeah, we know that it happens during execution. So this means that a program compiles, but no execution is not able to complete. Execution is not able to complete. So all these errors cause the problem at different stages. In syntax error, the program doesn't compile only. In runtime error, it will compile, but during execution, it will fail. And logical error, it will compile, it will execute, but you will be doomed. Now we'll come to something called data types. So we'll discuss some common data types. What are data types? Why do we need them? Types of data. See, computer, when we are using a computer, we are passing them a lot of different kinds of data, right? Now what happens is, the computer is a very innocent child, so they don't know what we are going to do. So for example, there is a variable v. Okay, don't take it v. There is variable x, where we are planning to store a very big number. So the computer, when it creates that variable, basically variable is not created, it's just an easily identifiable address to a memory location. For example, there's a memory location in the CPU somewhere in the storage. Okay, so that has a very absurd, weird kind of address. So variable is just a reference to that address, so that this is a very easily understandable and usable address. Okay, so So it refers to that address, so it refers to this memory location. So when you create the variable x in your program, the compiler the prog when of course during compilation the compiler they have they during sorry during execution they have to allocate a memory space. Now how much memory space they should allocate depends upon what you plan to do with this variable. If you plan to store very short value, small value, for example 1 bit of value, then why waste memory space? They can only allot 1 bit of memory to the x variable. If you plan to store very large values 10 to the power 20, so then they will allot bigger storage memory space to the variable. So that is why whenever you are creating a variable for the first time, you need to specify its data type. Means what type of data you plan to store in that variable, because on this data type only the memory space is allocated. Depending upon this data type, memory space is allocated to the in the memory. There are different types of data types depending upon what you want to do with them. Okay, and we'll know about them in detail now. Detail means a little bit of detail, of course. So, but there are some very common data types which we often use. For example, char, int. You must have heard it if you have a little bit of exposure to programming. Then you must have found int, float, double. Many of these will be common also. For example, int is something you'll find even in Java. You'll find even in different kinds of languages. Char is also you'll find it in Java. Int you'll find in float. Sorry, Python also. This is a picture. These are the major data types that are present used in C. Now don't get overwhelmed by so many of these. It's just I'll explain to you about it. For example, take a char. Okay, take this. This is the smallest unsigned char. I tell you signed unsigned meaning. It has a memory space of 1 byte. Okay, 1 byte means 8 bits, of course. I think we have discussed this, but okay, that's fine. That will help us in understanding the others. So every bit can have either 0 or 1. So every bit has two combinations. So what is the total number of combinations that is possible with these 8 bits? It's 256. Basically 2 to the power 8. That is why you will see that an unsigned char can store values from 0 to 255, because 0 is also counted. So basically total of 256 characters. Okay, and this is what we used in ASCII code, and this format specifier we'll talk about it after we talk about these three columns. Now what is a signed and unsigned char? For example, there's a unsigned int. This is unsigned short int and short int. So for example, there's an unsigned short int. Unsigned means we cannot store negative numbers in them, because the compiler won't be able to identify which is negative and which is positive. So, for example, when we have to write a negative number like -5, there is also a sign part there. Now, when you have to store -5 in a memory space in computer, this minus sign will also take up some space, right? So you have when you want to store positive as well as negative numbers, so the compiler has to check whether that minus sign is present in your number or not. So there has to be a memory space where that minus sign or that plus sign will go and stay, so that the compiler can go check that okay, minus is there, this means that this number is negative, plus is there, so this means this number is positive. So you have in signed ints basically, the or any signed where you used to sign wherever you have seen signed where long float double anything, the first bit it is used up for the sign, the negative or the positive sign, that is specified by the first bit. So basically the possible combination of numbers can only be used by stored by these 7 bits. Therefore you will see that an unsigned shortened, it has 2 bytes, so this means 16 bits. So the possible combinations are 2 to the power 16, which is basically 0 to 6, 2 to the power 16 is 65,536. But if you're using a signed int, though it has 2 bytes, but out of this 16 bits, 1 bit is already used for the sign, so you have only 15 bits. Therefore, the total combinations can be minus 2 to the power 15 to 2 to the power 15 minus 1. -1 because there is a 0 also. Therefore, the total combinations of numbers can only be 2 to the power 15 to the negative side and to the positive side. So this range is not something that you need to remember. This is something that you need to understand. Okay. For example, long int. So you all of you can try to calculate this as I am doing it. Maybe you can take 20-30 seconds and then we can discuss it. Just try to tell what can be the range of long int. Okay, you don't need to, of course, there's no, these are not the numbers to remember. Just take 15-30 seconds to absorb and try to find the, first remember that it is signed. What will be the range of signed long int? So it uses 8 bytes. So out of these 8 bytes means 64 bits. So 1 bit is used for the sign. So we have 63 bits. Therefore, the total possible combinations are -2 to the power 63 to 2 to the power 63 minus 1. Now let us talk about the format specifier. We didn't talk about the format specifier, right? See, this format specifier is used mainly in print statements. When we are using print statements, we need to, the printf function, it needs to know what is the data type of the number which is going to be printed. I'll show this to you by a very simple example. For example, there's a, I've written int x equals to 25, then int y equals to x plus 3. So basically x is equal to 25, y is equal to 28. This is a single line comment. Now if I'm writing a printf statement like this, my lucky number is, and I want to print this y. See, now y is not a fixed number. It depends upon the value of x. Maybe instead of 25, I'll be taking input in x. So now the value of y is completely dependent on x and the value of x is random. The user can give any input. Here I have taken 25, but it can be any input. So in that scenario, when we want to print y, then we have to we use a format specifier. Like y is an int, so that you see the format specifier for int is d, percentage d. So we use it like this, percentage d. And now how does the printf function execute? It starts printing from here, my lucky number is. As soon as it reaches the format specifier, it knows that okay, this is referring to some variable whose data type is integer. Okay, so it goes to the first variable here and it prints its value in place of this format specifier. So your output will be my lucky number is 28. Okay, see, this will print hello electroverts 24. So basically what is happening is, basically whenever the formats, also you can see this segmentation, see percentage d, slash n, all these are being shown in different colors. So it's so clear that okay, these are the different parts in my printf statement. If I have put something by mistake, I will correct it. So as soon as the printf statement reaches forward slash n, it changes the line. Then it starts printing ELECTROVERTS, then space. And as soon as it finds percentage d, it knows that okay, there's a data type, there's a variable whose value I need to print, which is of integer type. So it replaces the value of x at that point. For example, now if we want to print two values, assume that it is int y equals to 47, the number of hitman. So I can write it like this. Okay, see, now the first variable, first percentage d, format specifier, its value is replaced by x value, which is 24, and the second percentage d, when it is encountered, it is replaced by the y's value, which is 47. Format specifier, it just specifies the data type of the variable whose value needs to be printed at that point. Okay, we use them in print statements. See, format specifiers and these escape sequences, these are some things which are not, they're not directly printed as it is by the print statements. They tell the print statements that they have to do some special job there. Yes, see, different data types have different format specifiers. For example, if you're using char, we don't use all of them, don't get overwhelmed by so many things. For example, we use percentage c, we use percentage f for decimal values. See, float is a number which which we use to store decimal values. For example, 4.6. So when the decimal values come, we don't store them in int. Of course, int stands for integer. If you are using int, then we use percentage d. If you're using long int, then we use percentage ld, but we don't generally use them. So these are some common format specifiers which we use to specify the data types. It's not that you need to remember all of them. There are some common ones which you need to use very often. In fact, you'll find this picture is directly taken from Thinking Machines 2 book. I don't remember the page number, but you will also find it in the book. So you can download it from our website and you can refer this in detail from there as well. See, int has only 4 bytes, double has 8 bytes. So the size is different, and also double is used to store decimal values only. Okay. So if there is a larger decimal value that you need to store, if you're working on a rocket project or something, then you might use double. But for all your purposes, at least I have never needed to use double. Float will be sufficient, believe me. You will never need to store such a big decimal value that you need double to store it. But yes, even smaller decimal values you can store in double. See, if you have 2 liters milk, you can store it in a 10-liter tank. But if you have 10 liters of milk, then you can't store it in a 2-liter tank. That's the same concept. Just choose the data type which you are sure that it is larger than the size of the data that you are going to store. Yeah. Do you see the shortened and the unsigned shortened? So basically, let us take the example of unsigned shortened. Okay, it has a size of 2 bytes. Sorry. So, for example, 2 bytes have 16 bits. Now, unsigned means there is no issue of sign. You are only going to store positive numbers. So, as soon as you make a variable unsigned shortened, the compiler knows that there is no possibility of any negative number being stored in that variable. Okay, so all the 16 bits are going to store information about the number itself, not about its sign. Okay, so therefore the total possible combination of numbers that can be stored is 2 to the power 16, because every bit can have 1 or 0. Yeah, so all the 16 bits together, they can have a possible combination of 2 to the power 16. Therefore you'll find that, and of course unsigned means it positive as well as 0 is included, so the range of numbers is 0 to 2 to the power 16 minus 1, because 0 is also included. So total possible number of total possible combinations is 2 to the power 16. So the range of numbers which you can store in this is 0 to 2 to the power 16 minus 1. Okay, this is what is written here. 2 to the power 16 is 65,536. So it is 0 to 65,535. But when it comes to shortened, that means signed shortened. So here what will happen? See, there are 16 bits. So the first bit is used to specify the sign. I told you, no? See, -5 make minus b. So this minus, when you are storing, it will take up some space, no? So it takes one bit. The first bit goes in storing the sign. For example, if 1 specifies negative and 0 specifies positive, so the compiler will go and check the first bit, and if there is 1, so it knows that okay, all these other 15 bits are a negative number. If there's a 0, so it knows that all these 15 bits are representing a positive number. So one bit is gone in storing the sign. Now how many bits are remaining? 15. So how many total combination of numbers are possible? 2 to the power 15, right? Now 2 to the power 15 on the negative side of the 0 and 2 to the power 15 on the positive side of the 0. Therefore the range of numbers that you can store is minus 2 to the power 15 to 2 to the power 15 minus 1. This minus 1 is there because one number is also 0, so that is 0. So 0 is also here somewhere in between, and this is the total range of numbers which can be stored. Therefore, if you take the positive range of a signed data type, then it is less than an unsigned, because one bit is occupied. But of course there are negative range also, so that is also available for use. For example, you have written a code, the same code, int x, int y, x is equal to 25, y is equal to 25 into 25. Okay, no. For example, you are applying that formula in mathematics, a plus b into a minus b into a square minus b square, int p is equal to 23. Now you are doing int y is equal to x plus p into, this is how into is written in programming, x minus p. Now you assume that you are sending this code to someone who is not from mathematics background. Okay, so then you will like to add a comment here that implementing a square minus b square formula. Now see, this is a single line comment. I can't write it here. If I write formula here, na, then it will give an error because single line comment means that the compiler only knows one thing. From the point this for double slash is starting till the end of this line, this is a comment. So when it comes to the next line, it expects a line of code, and formula is not a line of code. Therefore, it will give a syntax error that you have written something that I don't even identify. You only identify. So if you want to write like this, then you have to put a multi-line comment. Multi-line comment. Multi-line comment has a starting and the beginning. So the compiler knows that okay, from the starting till the end, everything is a comment. Okay, but in a single line comment you can only write one line. So when someone is reading this code, he will read this part and he will understand that okay, you have applied this formula. Maybe he doesn't know this formula, maybe he doesn't understand why you have done x plus p into x minus p. So this is just a message. You can write arm, imli, anything. When the compiler comes, as soon as it encounters these two things, this and this, it doesn't care what the hell have you written in between. It just comes to the next line and starts executing from the next line. For example, see, when you have to create use so many data variables, so if they are of the same data type, so you can declare them in the same line only. Achha, there's two things: declare and initialize. See, when we are creating a variable, we tell the data type. This part is called declaring. Okay, English का नाम है. From the name only you can understand. When we declare that okay, this is the data type of the variable, then this thing is called declaration. And initialize, इसका क्या मतलब होता है? Simple है English में. In English, initialize means initializing something, initializing a process. So when we initialize a variable, when we store something in the variable for the first time after its creation, this is called initialization. For example, you are doing int x equals to 25. So this writing of this int x, this is declaration, and this storing the data for the first time, this is initialization. In many programming languages, if you don't initialize the language itself, there are default values for every data type. For example, in Java, there is a default value of 0 for integer. So if you don't initialize, the language itself initializes the variable with 0. Okay, so that happens with default values, but it's not in all languages. So what I mean to say is these are the two things. Now there are many different shortcuts to initialize and declare. For example, if you have to use 5 variables, so you can also create them like this: int x, y, z, a, b. So all these 5 variables can be declared in a single line. You don't need to write int x, int y, int z, int a, int b. You can also do it like this: int x equals to 5, y equals to 3, z equals to 7, and like this. So declaration and initialization, it can be done in one line also, but only for the same data type. It's not that here you can also, because of course all these are int, so you cannot introduce a double or a float data type here and you can store its value. So for a new data type, you will have to take a new line. Float p is equal to 7.3. So this is all the major things about data types. Now the next major things which we will be discussing from tomorrow is an important source of error. I like to call it typecasting. Okay, many places you'll find type, it referred to as type conversion. This is this is I'm specifically I want to discuss this because many a times we do these mistakes. It has happened to me once that because of a typecasting, when I teach you tomorrow this topic, you will see that okay, how simple this is. But once I had to spend 1.5 hours trying to identify a typecasting error. So if we don't understand it in the beginning, it can waste a lot of time. So I want to finish it in the beginning rather than leave it for when you do the actual work. So we'll do type conversion tomorrow. We'll try to understand. We'll do some type conversion tomorrow, and then we'll read about variables. Then we'll read about operators and how to use them and other stuff. Okay.